You know, it's funny. Something as seemingly simple as a roundabout, I mean, it's just a circular intersection, right?
Yeah,
Can actually be, well, a real source of head scratching for drivers.
absolutely.
You've sent us a great collection of materials, articles, blog posts, really digging into the ins and outs of roundabout navigation.
Hmm.
And our goal today is to, really get under the surface of this, especially those rule changes that came about in 2014.
Yeah, that was a key moment.
We want to help you, the listener, understand the definitive rules, hopefully steer clear of common errors, and just approach every roundabout with total confidence. Avoid those wait, who goes now
Hmm.
moments.
Exactly, that hesitation.
Okay, let's really unpack this. I was even in one last week where two cars just sort of stopped.
Yeah.
Nobody seemed sure who should go first.
Uh,
It really showed me that even now there's still some lingering confusion sometimes.
well, that anecdote you shared, it perfectly illustrates what these sources suggest about the time before 2014.
Oh.
It really was a period where roundabout rules felt a bit like the Wild West, you know?
Huh, yeah, I can imagine.
You had all these different interpretations floating around, online forums buzzing with debates, and just a lack of clear legal precedent on really basic stuff like which lane to use if you weren't taking the very first exit.
Right.
And what's truly revealing is how this period of ambiguity likely contributed to more minor accidents, more driver hesitation. It really underscored the need for a clearer legal framework.
Absolutely. One of the pieces you sent even quotes that Portuguese phrase, "No é proibido." Something like it wasn't against the rules to stay in that outer lane and just keep going past an exit.
Exactly. No é proibido estando na fila exterior passar por uma saída sem saída rotunda. That was the old way. A stark contrast to today.
And it's fascinating how this one unofficial image kept popping up online saying, "Proibido circular por fora." It's prohibited to drive on the outside.
Ah, yes, I remember seeing discussions about that.
Apparently, it didn't have any legal standing back then, but you could argue it sort of pointed towards, or maybe even influenced, where the law eventually went.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, like how traffic regulations
Mm,
evolve, you can see how even well-intentioned guidance can sometimes muddy the waters.
how so?
The old DGV, which is now IMTIP, they issued recommendations, right, trying to provide some clarity.
Okay.
But because these weren't legally binding obligations, drivers treated them inconsistently. Some followed them, some didn't,
Ah, I see.
creating this kind of patchy approach to roundabout etiquette that wasn't really anchored in firm rules.
Okay, so then 2014 rolls around. Sounds like the rule book got a major overhaul with Law 7220-13, specifically this Article 14.2.
Yeah.
So for you, the driver listening now, what were the most significant game changers?
Right. The most impactful changes really revolved around two key areas: establishing clear priority and enforcing lane discipline.
Priority and lanes. Got it.
Firstly, the law makes it crystal clear. You must yield priority to any vehicle already circulating within the roundabout. Doesn't matter which lane they're in.
Okay, yield to those inside. Simple enough.
And secondly, for the majority of motorized vehicles, there are specific exceptions like heavy vehicles, mopeds, animal-drawn vehicles. But for most cars and bikes, if you're in that outermost lane,
The right-hand lane, usually.
yes, the outermost one, you are now legally required to exit at the very first exit.
Oh, okay. So no more just hanging out in that right-hand lane if you're planning on going, say, straight through or further around.
Exactly, that's the big shift. For any exit beyond that initial one, the new requirement is to enter and initially position yourself in one of the inner lanes.
The left lane.
Correct. Then you only move to the right-hand lane after you've passed the exit immediately before the one you want to take.
So you shift right just before your exit.
Yes, and crucially, you must signal your intention to change lanes. And to make sure people comply, there are now penalties for violations. Fines ranging from €60 to $300.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a range, $60 to $300.
It is. The source doesn't spell out exactly why the range is so wide, but one might assume, the severity plays a part. Like, did you just make a mistake or did you cut someone off dangerously? That probably affects the fine.
That makes sense. It really sounds like the whole post-2014 emphasis shifted decisively towards using those inner lanes for going further around and keeping that outer lane mostly clear for people taking that first exit.
Precisely.
One of your sources has a really helpful section, a Sober Rotundus, Things to Know About Roundabouts. It neatly summarizes the core rules now. Let's maybe walk through those key points.
Certainly. Let's start with priority. The key thing to remember is when you lose priority.
Okay, when do I not have the right of way?
You lose it when you are entering the roundabout. You lose it when you are changing lanes within it, and naturally, you lose it to pedestrians when you are exiting.
Right. Enter, change lanes, exit near pedestrians yield.
It reflects a broader principle in traffic management, really. Prioritize the established flow. It works in many situations, not just roundabouts.
And what about my main obligations as a driver in a roundabout now?
Okay, obligations. You have to use your indicators and, importantly, use them with anticipation. Signal a couple of seconds before you plan to change lanes or exit. Give others warning.
Good advice generally, but crucial here.
Very. And if you're not taking that first exit, the general rule post-2014 is to enter using a left side or inner lane.
Okay.
And of course, there's the fundamental obligation we always have.
Yeah.
Everything possible to avoid an accident.
Yeah.
That's paramount.
Always. Now, what about the things that are specifically prohibited now? Things you absolutely cannot do since 2014?
The prohibitions are quite explicit now. You cannot exit directly from an inner lane. You have to move to the right-hand lane first.
No cutting across from the inside lane straight out.
Correct. Also, crossing multiple lanes in one single maneuver is strictly forbidden.
Okay, one lane change at a time.
Exactly. And unless traffic flow forces you to, stopping within the roundabout itself isn't permitted. Keep moving if possible.
Right.
And as we've hammered home, continuing in that outer lane beyond your first exit, unless you're driving one of those exempted vehicles, is now a violation.
Got it. But are there still some things that are allowed? Nuances?
Yes, it's still okay to exit in the left-hand lane of the exit road itself if, say, the right lane of the exit is blocked, or if it's genuinely more convenient for where you're going next. But the source stresses, do it with extreme caution.
Okay, so exiting into the left lane to the exit street is okay sometimes, but be careful.
Yes. And just to reiterate, that pre-2014 freedom for most cars to just stay in the outer lane while passing multiple exits, that's gone.
It's quite a shift, isn't it? Clearly aimed at making things more predictable.
Definitely. Smoother flow is the goal.
And speaking of how they work, your source also touches on the general advantages of roundabouts. Why do we even have them?
Well, what's fascinating here is the data. It suggests roundabouts contribute to reducing both how often accidents happen and how severe they are when they do.
Really? Why is that?
It likely comes down to the lower speeds involved and fewer direct conflict points compared to, say, a standard crossroads with traffic lights.
Makes sense. Less T-bone potential.
Exactly. Plus, they can often improve traffic flow, less stop-start idling.
Better for fuel consumption and emissions, then.
That's the idea, lower pollution. And they can actually be cheaper to install and maintain than traffic light systems over the long run.
Interesting.
Oh, and surprisingly, perhaps, they often make U-turns easier and safer in many situations. Some studies even point to quite a significant drop in injury accidents when intersections are converted to roundabouts.
Despite all these clear benefits, though, it seems drivers still mess up sometimes. What are the most common mistakes people make?
Yeah, problems still happen. A big one is failing to use indicators correctly, either not signaling at all or signaling way too late.
Not giving enough warning.
Right.
Right.
Entering the roundabout without properly yielding to vehicles already circulating is another huge one. Very common cause of bumps.
Just pulling out without looking properly.
We also see drivers trying to cut across multiple lanes at once.
The diagonal dash.
Yeah, or just generally ignoring vehicles in adjacent lanes or others trying to enter, and of course, unnecessarily staying in that outer lane in multi-lane roundabouts when their exit is much further around.
Hogging the outside lane.
Basically.
Okay, so for someone listening, navigating a multi-lane roundabout, what are the best practices? How should you pick your lane when you go in, and how do you exit smoothly?
Good question. If your exit is the very first one after you enter, the safest and now legally required way for most cars is simple. Be in the right-hand lane as you approach and enter. Stay right, exit right.
Easy enough for the first exit. What about the others? Straight on or left?
For any exit beyond that first one, you should generally enter using one of the inner lanes. Signal left as you move towards that inner position.
Signal left on entry if going past the first exit.
That's often recommended to show your intention to circulate. Then, and this is critical, you only move to the right-hand lane after you have passed the exit just before the one you actually want.
Okay, pass the exit before yours, then move right.
Yes, and remember to signal right when you make that lane change. And always, always check your mirrors and blind spots before any lane change in there. Things can happen fast.
Absolutely. Your source even had that clear bit of advice in Portuguese. Something like, if you want to exit, you must move right or already be there. If you want to keep going around, try to move to the inner left lane.
That's it. Quem quer ser? Debe ir mudando para fiel da direita o já estar lá. E quem quer continuar a contornar a rotunda é conveniente ir tentando mudar para a fila interior da esquerda. It really sums up the intended flow. Get right to exit, get left to continue.
If you connect that to the roundabout's efficiency, it really highlights planning ahead, right? Position yourself early.
Exactly. It minimizes those sudden, potentially dangerous last-minute lane changes and helps keep everything moving smoothly for everyone.
It's also helpful that your source gives a quick rundown of the different types of roundabouts you might encounter. It's not just one size fits all, is it?
Not at all. Understanding the different designs helps you anticipate how to handle them. You've got your small mini roundabouts, often just a painted circle,
Right, in residential areas sometimes.
then more compact urban ones, and the larger multi-lane versions on main roads or highways. Then there are grade-separated ones, like the dumbbell interchange you see connecting highways.
Ah, yeah, where two roundabouts are linked by a bridge over or under the main road.
Exactly. And turbo roundabouts, those are interesting. They use physical dividers or raised curbs within the roundabout.
Oh, to force you into a lane.
Pretty much. They channel traffic into specific lanes before the exits, which basically eliminates the need for lane changes inside the main circle. Reduces conflict points.
Clever.
And the source even mentions roundabouts specifically for pedestrians, apparently found in places like China.
Huh. Okay, that's different. And what about the markings on the road surface itself, the horizontal signage? That plays a big part too, doesn't it?
A huge part. Those painted lines and symbols are crucial guides.
Like solid white lines.
Yes, continuous white lines are often used to physically guide drivers in the outer lane towards an exit, making it difficult or illegal to just keep going straight around from that lane.
Forcing you off.
Essentially. You might also see continuous lines on the inside between lanes, preventing people from cutting out across lanes at certain points where it would be unsafe. And you sometimes see spiral markings in more complex roundabouts, designed to gently guide drivers into the correct lane as they get closer to their exit.
It sounds like a lot of that pre-2014 confusion really boiled down to the lack of hard legal rules.
Yeah.
It was more recommendations and interpretations that people treated or didn't treat as rules.
That seems to be the core of it. The source mentions looking back at some of the contradictions or confusion from that era.
Yeah.
It's quite insightful, actually. For instance, there's a reference to a widely shared video with a Mr. Alcinio C. He was trying to explain how to use roundabouts.
Okay.
But the video apparently showed a situation that, while maybe common practice then, wasn't actually a legal requirement at the time. It highlights the ambiguity.
So people were teaching things that weren't strictly law.
Or recommending best practices that got mistaken for law. The key takeaway is, before 2014, many common beliefs were just recommendations, not legal obligations. Same with videos from the Automóvel Clube Portugal, the ACP. Helpful advice, yes, but not legally enforceable rules back then.
And it wasn't just informal stuff. Even the official recommendations from the old DGV.
Right. Undoubtedly intended to improve safety.
But they were based on interpreting general traffic laws,
Right.
like Articles 13, 14, 43, not a specific roundabout law.
Exactly. That dedicated legal framework just wasn't there until 2014. So you had this situation where many drivers thought the recommendations were mandatory, adding to the uncertainty.
I can see how that would be confusing.
Precisely. And driver training materials back then obviously reflected the existing, somewhat vague traffic code. They might have been okay for simple roundabouts, but maybe struggled with the big multi-lane ones. And it's always vital to remember the hierarchy. Signs at the roundabout always override the general rules in the code. If a sign tells you to do something specific, you do that.
Good point. Signs trump general rules. The source also briefly touches on left exits in roundabouts. That sounds potentially confusing. What does that mean?
Yeah, it could sound odd. It just refers to exits that are geographically to your left before you actually enter the roundabout circle.
Ah, okay. So if I'm going 3/4 of the way around, that exit is sort of to my left from my entry point.
Exactly. So for those exits, it usually makes sense to position yourself in an inner, more leftward lane within the roundabout itself. It sets you up for a smoother exit when you get there.
It really all seems to circle back, no pun intended, to that core principle mentioned. Dificultar as entradas, facilitar as saídas. Make entry a bit more cautious to help exits flow better.
That's the fundamental idea behind modern roundabout design and regulations. Slowing entry slightly allows traffic inside to clear more easily.
And maybe to lighten the mood a bit, because let's face it, roundabouts can be frustrating. The source even mentions rear comm as rotundas, laughing with roundabouts.
Yeah. Acknowledging the shared experiences, the near misses, the confusion, something many drivers can probably relate to.
So to kind of wrap this all up for you, our listener, the really crucial takeaways from this deep dive are: get familiar with those post-2014 rules,
Mm.
especially lane use and priority.
Absolutely essential.
Use your indicators clearly, use them early, and always try to anticipate your exit well before you get there. Plan your path.
Definitely. And this raises a really important question for you to consider.
No?
Well, given this huge variety of roundabout designs, we see tiny mini roundabouts, huge multi-lane systems, turbo
Yeah, they're
roundabouts.
all different.
Do you think a single one-size-fits-all legal approach, like the one introduced in 2014, is truly the most effective way to ensure both smooth traffic flow and maximum safety across all these different types?
It's a really interesting point. Is the current law flexible enough for all situations?
Maybe not. Perhaps with this new understanding of the rules, observing how drivers actually behave in the roundabouts in your own local area might offer some fascinating insights into that question.
Hmm.
Does the law fit the reality on the ground everywhere?
Definitely some food for thought there. Something to keep in mind the next time you're approaching one. Thanks for joining us for this deep